welcome to this special workshop meeting of the Town Board of the Town of Wappinger. May Deputy Town Clerk Patterson please call the roll.
Councilman Beal, Councilwoman Odell,
Here.
Councilman Phillips,
Here.
Councilman Casella,
Here.
Supervisor Cavassini.
Here. Just a moment, we'll invite you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. That will be followed by a moment of silent meditation in memory of Jim Tremper, who passed away, a dedicated contractor to the town of Wappinger, a dear friend, and obviously brother of Mike Tremper here. So please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you all for being here. I would first like to begin by thanking our professional consultants who have joined us here today, members of our town hall team, as well as my colleagues on the town board. This has been countless hours of work and planning that the town has reviewed and evaluated these proposed zoning amendments. The purpose of this morning's workshop is to continue an important dialogue that we've been having really from the beginning about the future of land use and development here in the town of Wappinger. We felt that this would be more productive during work hours. This way we have a little more time to get things done and people's minds a little more fresh. These proposed changes are not a result of a single project or a single application. Rather, they are the product of years of observation, experience, and lessons learned from residential subdivision development throughout the town of Wappinger. Over time, we have repeatedly encountered situations where the theoretical development yield that has been permitted under our current zoning code simply does not reflect the realities of the land. Even after a thorough planning board review, environmental constraints are identified, lots are adjusted, and infrastructure concerns are addressed, many of these developments still end up producing a large number of homes on properties that were never truly capable of supporting that level of density in a conventional and a practical manner. The result has been subdivisions with numerous restrictive easements, reduced setbacks, limited usable yard space, and deed restrictions that prevent and prohibit common residential uses such as pools, fences, and other improvements. Frankly, folks, we don't have to look far because almost every new subdivision in this town has this very issue. In these cases, many of these neighborhoods have homes that are selling for close to or over $1 million each. And quite frankly, when families, our future residents, purchase that property and make that kind of investment in this community, they should have a quality of life that's worth that amount without cumbersome restrictions. Our goal is to ensure that future residents do not continue to have these same challenges that they face today, and that development better reflects the realities of the land, as well as the expectations of those future residents. As a part of this effort, we took a comprehensive look town-wide. Wappinger already is the second most densely populated town in this county, and yet we are the smallest geographical town in this county. We carefully evaluated properties that throughout this town's history were never developed at significant times of development throughout this town's history. These lands that we're looking at here today survived the post-war housing boom, the massive development of this town in the 1970s with IBM, and the clustering movements of the 1980s and the 1990s. and the housing boom of the 2000s. These properties that we're talking about survived all of those development pressures. Why? Because many of these properties present substantial constraints, including steep slopes, wetlands, utility corridors, cemeteries, archaeological resources, and environmental sensitivities. These are often complicated parcels that require thoughtful planning and realistic expectations, to be quite frank. The responsibility of this town board is to acknowledge that these are the realities and to ensure that our zoning regulations reflect the same. The town board passed a comprehensive plan update as well as town code updates last year that restrict high-density multifamily housing from being built in single-family zoned areas. Our current housing ratio of 60% single-family and 40% multifamily with 4,006 apartment units is the reason why we took that stance. Since January, this town board has met in open session with our professionals to carefully examine a number of these critical questions regarding our town's current zoning map. We have evaluated whether adequate water supply is there, whether sewer service is available, or if it would even be accepted by Tri-Municipal. Would septic systems be able to be supported in these areas? Whether stormwater infrastructure would be sufficient enough, and would those requirements have an adverse effect on the neighborhoods? And whether roads and infrastructure can safely accommodate this future growth. We have also carefully considered the impacts on police, fire, EMS, highway, recreation, and other municipal services, as well as the potential need for future capital improvements and long-term maintenance obligations that would be placed on this town government. We discussed how infrastructure constraints should be addressed through zoning, development phasing, special permits, and other regulatory tools. Beyond infrastructure, we also examined land use compatibility and community character. We reviewed surrounding zoning districts, existing neighborhood patterns, and whether proposed changes create logical transitions between uses. We carefully considered these amendments in support of the goals of our comprehensive plan, and we are encouraging appropriate economic development as well as preserving the town's character. Particular attention was also given to our hamlet areas and historic corridors. We asked ourselves, how can we preserve the character of places like New Hackensack, Hewsonville, Myers Corners, and preserve that character while creating opportunities for innovative development within those corridors. After months of analysis, discussion, and public deliberation, I believe that we have developed a thoughtful and balanced approach. I appreciate the recommendations and the expertise of the LaBerge Group, as well as the collaborative effort amongst the town board and our professional staff. At this time, I invite Nicole Allen from the LaBerge Group to start us off and present the recommendations from our professionals.
Thank you very much. So the map that you have in front of you and up on the screen here is a reflection of the thought that has gone into all of that preservation and forethought into the economic development as well. And so the purple, as shown, does show the recommended R5 redistricting. We've left on the map so you can see the base district just to be able to illustrate where the districts were coming from, and you will see that it's largely the R40 and the R80 that are mostly large lots that are being upzoned into the R5A. Highlighted are a handful of red parcels that are included in that purple, but highlighted as red because they are small lots. These are under the 5 acres. They're kind of on the edges, trying to figure out from the board, do they stay in the R5A or do we make some modifications to move them into an adjacent district or leave them as is? Some of them are small, some of them have houses, they would be non-conforming. Some of them, like the town's well site, is smaller, but it makes sense to leave it in the R5A, the round circle in the middle of the map there. But highlighted just so that it was very clear which ones are undersized at the moment. And then the blue does show the hamlet areas that are recommended for modification for the hamlet mixed zone. There are 3 areas that are presented on the map, and I can zoom in any of the areas as we move forward. And then there are 2 parcels that are recommended for R80 to maintain that continuity with the adjacent parcels. So as we look at these, I also have the other maps will illustrate where the water and the sewer districts are, where some of the wetlands are, so that we're able to at least see why it makes sense for some of these parcels to be examined in this capacity if there are questions. A lot of what we discussed shows that these parcels make sense from continuity of smart growth preservation, in many ways being able to preserve the rural character and allowing some growth boundaries within where you have focused development already, and being able to put that process together to help preserve what Wappinger is now and for the future, particularly with the Cranberry parcel that was bought and preserved, and being able to keep that continuity of that area intact as well. And so this map is very similar to the one that you had previously. I know that this one was just received last night, and so the modifications that you're seeing here are really just cleaned up boundaries from the rest of the town to make sure that there were no incorrect labels or incorrect boundaries for other parcels before you made this one into law. We just wanted to make sure that this was the correct map as it gets recodified, essentially. So that was the late in just trying to make sure everything was correctly digitized that way. And then there were just a handful of red parcels that were removed and put back into the original district, but there were a handful of parcels that remained for discussion. And with that, I would love to open it up for any questions, and I can zoom in any areas that do need additional focus.
Would you be able to also show the water map, the
Yep.
sewer map, the wetland
Absolutely.
map?
Yeah, I can run through these too. And let me zoom in a little bit and close as I get familiar with your laptop here.
Thank you.
That's all good. This is the water map. To be able to show the districts. You can see the water district overlaid on top of kind of the central eastern portion of the town. Most of the purple, it is, I call it purple, the R5A, is within that water district area. And there are areas of larger parcels also outside the water district. So one, thinking about what that would mean for the water district would be either extensions, expansion of the water district if those R5A parcels were not rezoned and were left for more intense development. And then also within the water district, knowing that those could potentially be redeveloped into more parcels as well, would be a tax on those, on that water district. Looking at the sewer, you'll see a very similar pattern. Just this one's color intense, doesn't pop quite as nice as the blue, but because there's several sewer districts, but you'll see that it actually is probably more encompassing over the areas that are intended to be preserved or upzoned for the R5A. A lot of that is within a sewer district, and then there's some within the lower part, the southern part of the town that is just outside that would be ripe for development in requiring a sewer extension to be able to kind of meet the capacity there. When looking at the wetland map, you see some of the other reasons for considering these parcels. Now looking at the lower part of the town, you'll see that it is actually very wet and doesn't make sense necessarily to have that as far as the smaller lots. So now looking at the lower part, you see that was outside the sewer district, outside the water district, but now it's also very wet. So it makes sense to include as part of the protection area and upzone that to the R5A to reduce the impacts to that environmentally sensitive area. Similar to looking at the other portion that was just outside the water and sewer, just north of the Cranberry property, it's very wet as well, to be able to keep that habitat intact.
I would like to note on here, obviously, we just talked about water and sewer infrastructure. I'd like to turn things over to Larry Podgy, town engineer, Mike Tremper, our water and sewer operator, for your thoughts.
So relative to water, to start out with water, the current situation with our district capacity is we have the water system's is in good condition, and we're able to serve all the current needs. There is some excess capacity. That excess capacity is not extensive. Just as a point of reference, there was a relatively recent water main break, and it happened to be that break was in an area that we had some metering prior to that area, so we were able to estimate what we lost, and it was about equivalent to our excess capacity. So we feel like the reserve that we have right now is not something that we can say, oh, we've got this excess capacity that we can just give to additional customers. What we've actually committed to the health department in a report that we submitted a couple of years ago was that reserve capacity would be used only for situations where residents were in emergency situations where they were out of water or they had a contaminated supply. Those would be the only additional users that we would consider at this time. And then keep the remaining capacity for situations where breaks occur, as they will. Relative to sewer, that's a tricky one, where Tri-Municipal is currently under a consent order from the DEC. We haven't had any additional connections to Tri-Municipal since that consent order has been served outside of a couple of single-family homes. So where that's going is unsure. We've got a little bit of an unsure future there. We have some plans of action that we're working on, but our sewer capacity at this point, I would say, is questionable. So, fair representation?
Yes, I think I would add, there's not much to add to the sewer, because there's a lot of unknowns there,
Yeah.
okay? For the water, we have 3 well fields. They're all deemed under the influence of surface water, which means you require filtration. So where we have, it looks like capacity there, you're held hostage to the treatability of the water and the ever-changing requirements set off by the EPA, you know, these forever pollutants, which are important, the PFOs and PFOAs. We're in a state of flux where those limits are. You know, elevation in those limits could really shortcut what it looks like we have a capacity at source, could really limit that.
Bless you.
The treatability of the water in some of our well fields is difficult, which adds to the expense. And more importantly, when you look at our infrastructure, Larry was talking about a water main break, some of it's 60 years old now, all right? And the older the infrastructure, the more likely you are to have these water main breaks that draft the system down. Additionally, where we have, it looks like capacity with source, our storage, would need additional storage tanks to go forward. For good or for bad, I worked in the town where every hot summer we had to have a water conservation band and ride around and tell people they can't water their lawn and tell them they can't fill their pools and deputize the building department to give tickets. I don't think we want to go back there. So the water, that's kind of a summary of the water.
Thank you.
And the sewer is the same.
I would like to note, too, on the record, that it wasn't just one water main break, right? We also had one when I had first taken office that January at the Chapel Sacred Mirrors site. And, thankfully, Mike, your team, they're right on it. They were able to find out where this water main break was. But that available capacity in both scenarios for these two water main breaks within this administration, both discharged our available capacity.
And there were 2 water main breaks just on Blackthorn Loop.
That's the one that we're talking about.
They're
Yeah.
separate breaks.
Yes, they're separate breaks, but the first one over the winter was the substantial one we're talking about.
Yeah, they were both within a couple of weeks of each other,
Yeah.
Blackthorn Loop.
Yeah, there were 2 on Blackthorn Loop.
Yeah. Barbara Birdie, welcome back. It's always good to have you here. Barbara, we've seen the implementation of a lot of these projects in front of the planning board and go through your office, obviously. Would you be able to give us a synopsis as to what you've seen, with the current zoning map, current zoning laws, and how this has come into play with some of these recent subdivisions?
Sure. So our subdivision code is old. There have been some updates here and there, but never a total overhaul. And I think a lot of the lots that existed, some of them were very strange, pizza-shaped, zigzag, and we made it work. I think the health department 20, 30 years ago wasn't as strict. We didn't have wetland laws. We didn't have stormwater laws. All of these things take up parts of each lot or of a subdivision and makes it harder to subdivide. The planning board can only stop at a point that the code allows. But what I have found over the last 10 years or better is that we're creating lots that can't really fill a family's needs. So what happens is you have rear yards that just meet the setback. Most setbacks are 40 or 50 feet to the rear of the house. Well, if you want to put a pool in, you automatically need a variance. If you want to put a shed, a large shed, becomes a problem. Now we have the wetland law. So you may have lots that are very deep. There could be an acre behind the house, but if most of it's wet and then a 100-foot buffer, you may only have 20 or 30 feet. So before they even contemplate putting a pool or a shed in, they need a variance. And I personally don't think we should be creating lots that are a hardship before they even get bought. The other thing is we're creating lots that have stormwater facilities behind them. And I think, speaking to a lot of our new residents, when they buy the houses and the land is flat and they don't really see it, and I hear, well, they should have saw it on a map. And I think the general public doesn't know what to look for easements going up both sides, or to look for stormwater ponds. Now they've purchased the house, they get to the closing, and they realize they're going to have a hole in their backyard. And it's hard, and they come in, and we have to deny what they want, and you feel really bad for these people because they can't fit what they want. And what you brought up earlier, these homes are going for $600,000 to over $1 million. And today, people want pools, they want cabanas, they want everything the American dream is. And I think we need to start creating lots that afford that for people.
Absolutely. Thank you. I would also like to note, we had discussed the Hamlet mixed-use zone expansion to Myers Corners corridor and Hamlet, as well as the New Hackensack Hamlet. The intention is to take the frontage along these corridors where we have historical homes, structures that are an asset to adaptive reuse, whether that is residential or a commercial use. Specifically, if you zoom in around the intersection of Myers and All Angels, the bigger cluster right there, you'll see the area from the New Hackensack Firehouse over to the gas station there, Pete's Deli, the old Parsons properties, the Grange, that there we're looking at, nope, just a little further down, sorry, that one. doing a hamlet mixed use to, again, preserve that character. There's been a number of those properties that will be changing hands and going up for sale or have recently been purchased. Then again, the town is looking to ensure that there's not a strip mall that gets put in right there or something that would affect or impact the quality of life of that area. So by identifying that corridor with something such as hamlet mixed use that already calls out the character of the community, calls out specific uses, it calls out specific designs, we felt that was appropriate. And if you can go up to New Hackensack, the New Hackensack hamlet actually is, just a little history lesson, the first legitimately settled village in our town, with many of those homes dating back to the 1700s. We were looking to preserve that corridor there, but at the same time, preserve the current uses that are happening on the rears of these property along 376. So the intent here was taking the first 90 feet, which whoever built these homes back in the 1700s all built them
Right on the road.
you're right in a row, and so to the back of those homes were 90 feet, and we would be able to preserve that character through there. Mr. Tremper owns one of those properties there. So the house that's in the front could still be mixed use, it could be commercial, it could be residential, but if something were to come in, they would have to build it to a certain design, build it close to the road, sidewalks, X, Y, and Z. But then the industrial or commercial use that is occurring there, the contractor yards, things like that, is still preserved, and that's going to stay the current zoning, and I want to emphasize that for everyone. That area stretches from the New Hackensack Cemetery, the former Warnock House, the veterinary hospital, and Avalon, and some of those apartment complexes there, just with the intent of beautifying the New Hackensack corridor. I'd like to open up any questions, any comments?
You can see some of the pizza-shaped parcels that are remaining in the red that are just kind of a little bit of a misfit in some of the areas.
The town owns a lot of those.
They do. And there are a lot of what appear to be landlocked parcels as well that have been created over the history as well. Some of them do have easements, but there are some non-conforming lots that look like they are landlocked as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've been looking at these maps for a few months now, and I'm mostly concerned, of course, with Ward 2, the southern part of our town. And what you said about the water is most, I guess, that's, yeah, very appropriate, because we really need to have enough water for all of our people. So, and what you said, Nicole, about the wetlands, especially in the southern part, I mean, I think it makes sense to make sure that they're preserved and make sure the zoning is correct for that.
So one of the concerns I had coming in here is I want to make sure we have a consistent methodology of how we're determining how we're going to make some 5-acre, going to keep some in R80, et cetera, because as long as we have the consistent methodology, and I think Larry, Mike, and yourself have described some of those with the sewer, the water, et cetera, water capacity, you know, where right now we're at capacity, and God forbid you have an accident like we did on Blackthorn Loop. Again, that took up basically our excess capacity. So again, I just want to make sure we have a consistent methodology that, you know, in case somebody has a question, we can go back and explain, this is why we did. There's wetlands, there's water or sewer that's available to them, et cetera. So again, consistent methodology is something I think that we need to take a look at in here. And I'm glad that you've laid it out the way you have, because it's very easily understood here. I'm sure some of those in the audience may not feel that way, but looking at some of the properties, hopefully, you know, doing this hamlet mixed-use stuff is going to make sense to, I think, Mr. Derek, probably the area where you're looking at. And some of the other areas, I know that, you know, off Susage Place, they're looking at also some rezoning there too. So I would encourage, if you have questions, concerns, now's the time to ask those questions. I'm focused on Fourth Ward, but again, looking at the entire town. So I have the 376 corridor, I have New Hackensack, all that's related to myself. So again, not trying to be eccentric here, but that's something I'm specifically looking at. And I understand, you know, the properties that are 90 feet away from the Route 376, and, you know, that was been there code forever. But again, we want to try to make sure mixed-use, Hamlet, we can make this all work out, and it, you know, makes the town look nice. And again, doing it based on the fact that we have water capacity, sewer capacity, because that's going to make a significant difference. And again, working with Tri-Muni, you're right, things are up in the air right now, so we're not sure if we're going to have additional capacity available to us. So again, those are things we have to take into consideration. The other thing, too, is when these maps were originally drawn for water sewer, there was a finite amount of water capacity. So it was, some lots take up more than what was originally expected. You only have a finite amount of water that you can pass out. So that's the other thing we got to take into account. So Regency or something takes up more water than we originally expected, that means somebody else is going to get that much left. So just things to take into consideration as we move forward with this.
And I would like to note, Councilman, on that perspective there, there has been a number of outside this town changes, local laws, state laws, I should say, that have been adopted that ultimately affect the zoning over the years. Obviously, the last time that this was comprehensively reviewed was 2010. This town board obviously took a comprehensive review in 2025 and now in 2026. So, looking at the 2010 map, which is majority of this, we did not have the same wetlands laws that have been adopted by the state of New York. We did not have the same MS4 regulation, which is stormwater. Those ponds, they were not the same laws and legislation that we had back when this zoning was originally implemented. And so exactly what Mrs. Roberti had noted is, yeah, you know, a developer might have bought a piece of property looking at the map, saying, well, I can do X, Y, and Z. At the end of the day, we're actually doing them a disservice, because that is not the reality of today. Between either you look at the conventional yield of the property, or you look at the laws that have been passed by the state of New York restricting this development. You didn't have, such as on Miracle Circle, those massive ponds a few years ago. This is all new legislation that's come out.
Didn't Opal just rescind seeker?
So it was rescinded based upon process, but the process will just be recreated and it'll be readopted.
Presumably it's been eliminated.
Right. But
So it's kind of,
These as of the 27th, my understanding.
it's a funny thing that they did. They imposed additional restrictions in terms of stormwater. They imposed additional restrictions in terms of wetlands, but then removed items from seeker and attempted to streamline the process. But at the same time, the state of New York is still passing legislation that makes it cumbersome, which I'm not opposed to. The seeker review process is really the town's only legal avenue through the planning process to pause and evaluate the impact a project would have on the community. Not just the wetlands and the wildlife, but also police, fire, EMS, road capacity, schools, things like that. So example, like your property. Your property has a home that was built in the 1730s. Under the state of New York, even though you have the rest of that property there, that's considered previously developed, right? So it doesn't need to go through a seeker review process. And those are the concerns, that we don't know what the state of New York is going to throw down next. And again, in terms of protecting the quality of life of the town, we have to do our part to do that.
I also had a question about, so you were going through the different business zones in the area. So like one over by the fire station was neighborhood business MB.
That's currently.
Yeah, so and the other was GB, general business. So you're changing all of those to Hamlet mixed use.
They were changing portions of them to that. So, like example, DeGarmo Hills Plaza, that's obviously a strip mall, right? That is zoned shopping center. That is staying, okay? The frontage along those lots, some of them are residential, and they're not residential uses, or they're corporate office park. There has been a corporate office park there in 30, 40 years. So we're updating that to, again, a more hamlet-friendly base zoning, which is existing in our code. The rear of some of those properties, again, where there are contractor yards, we don't want to get in the middle of that, because those are good uses, they're sustainable, they've been there for a while, they're limited impact on the community, so we're going to keep the rears the same. Same thing with around the airport at New Hackensack. Obviously, we've created an airport industrial center out there. The intent is not to change that. The intent is to foster a walkable downtown with some mixed use there that would make sense in that corridor. Along Myers Corners Road going west, obviously, there are a number of commercial enterprises that take place right in the area of Ketchum High School. You have Red Barn, you have Ketchum High School, you have the veterinary office. So creating that corridor there right outside of Ketchum High School would make sense for a hamlet mixed-use approach. That is what we're looking at. And again, existing hamlet areas are Hewsonville and Swartattville. And so we'd be expanding that elsewhere to, again, be something a little more neighborhood friendly. Neighborhood business, there's another one that is out at 376 and Maloney Road, that's New Hackensack Plaza. It's an intrusive, large commercial development, not something that we necessarily want to facilitate elsewhere.
So next question is, why does the blue then not go to Red Barn? And,
Because Red Barn is agricultural, so they're agriculturally zoned, so their farm stand is,
they don't grow anything, okay.
well, we're not going to opine on that.
I've got a question, Nicole, if you could just help me out. I'm still kind of new to this. So looking mostly at the southwest property, the southwest, it's the R4080. So as I understand it, 40,000 square feet is about an acre, 80,000 is about 2 acres, right?
Correct.
And is it 40 if you have water and 80 if you don't have water? Or why is it 40/80 now?
Barbara, would you
Oh, maybe you could help me.
So if you have water and sewer,
Right,
then you get the drop down to have to fit into R40.
right.
If you have neither water or sewer, now we know you need wells and septics, so you have to go to 2 acre zoning, which is R80.
So that property that you have there, if you go a little bit farther west.
Yeah, that one.
one, the 40/80, like what was the determination, like why did you decide that one?
So that one is slated for the R5A just because of its size, and being able to recognize that it already doesn't have water or sewer.
So it's really R80 right
So
now?
let me
or
let me
not?
just say this. So when I took office, there was a significant proposal for multifamily on that site. We obviously changed the code to restrict multifamily and single-family zoned areas. That area, I'm sure Mr. Birdie can attest to that, was a substantial multifamily proposal. There was concerns that they could tie into the Chelsea Ridge private infrastructure there, which there were talks about. Also, don't forget, if you just look right to the left there,
Right.
what do you see?
It's
You see,
multifamily, yeah.
no, not multifamily, to the left. You see at the end of Skytop, a water line. Town water is run there. There is a proposal to run water to that property. So to get ahead of this, it was looked at to keep it consistent with the area, which obviously abuts Stony Kill Farms, the gateway to the town, which is a very rural section, and obviously keep that consistent with the R5A.
And that property is only about 6 acres, right?
Again, the concern would be with the water and sewer that could be run there,
Right.
what could happen. So, just because it isn't there on paper doesn't mean it hasn't been spoken about. There was actually that property, that developer came in to speak to the Chelsea Fire District Board of Fire Commissioners. This is under the prior administration, and said, I got all my town approvals, we're ready to go, and we're going to have sewer run, we're going to have water there, it's going to be great. This is the proposal. And little did they know that one of the commissioners that was sitting there was the chairman of our planning board, Bruce Flower. And Bruce definitely told them that they did not have any town approvals, and was able to share this information with us that was being spoken about with the prior administration. So that is why some of these properties were also included, because yes, on paper or on the map, it might seem, why are we doing this?
Right, I mean, it looks,
In all reality, these are concerns that have come forward in terms of the density that we need to address.
And that one is also adjacent to other R5A, so the connection
Correct.
made sense for connectivity and preservation.
and I understand 9D is right there, and we have to think about our traffic and everything like
Yeah,
that. So,
absolutely. I mean, already we're dealing with significant issues along Route 1 in
Correct.
terms of traffic. The Village of Wappingers Falls, we're working with them to impose the weight limits that they have in their village and stop truck traffic from coming through 9D. And in addition to that, between the train station emptying out onto there, several multifamily complexes, Chelsea Ridge is the largest apartment complex in Dutchess County. That's in our town. In addition to all of the other ones that we have, the largest one empties out onto 9D. So wherever we can lessen that congestion, that was the intent.
got it. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Councilman. Any further discussion? Yes, Mr. Lund.
Morning. How many R20 properties are on this?
There's a few.
R20 that are being removed from R20, nothing is being converted to R20 in this
How
discussion.
many are existing R20s are being discussed at the end?
Give me a moment. Give me a moment.
Right now, there's,
Yeah.
I see 5 or 6. I
R20,
see 5.
Are there any of those that had put any proposals to the town for development in the past 12 months or since?
Some of them, yes.
yes, there's
Are they in the sewer district, some of these, or?
Some of them, yes.
So this is the list of the R20 parcels. It's approximately 20 altogether. I did quick math scanning.
So 20.
Yeah. Most of them are within water and sewer. About 50/50 with the wetlands as far as limitations.
Nicole, could you go back to the map that you had up prior? Could you go slightly north? Depicted in orange is the parcel of property that I own.
This one?
I'd be curious what the thought process was in looking at changing, considering there is part of the sewer district. There's smaller lots to the right. There's a couple apartment complexes across the street. And when I originally purchased that property, I spoke to the building department even prior about what the process was in looking at doing a potential development in there. Years ago, it had been presented to do something like 37 lots. I have plans that have gone now into the planning board to develop 11 lots there. It's within the sewer district, and it looks like it's kind of isolated for a rezone, but by comparison to the surrounding property and density of the property like the Susich, it certainly doesn't seem like what I've proposed is out of what would be a reasonable expectation of yield for that property. I'm not pushing for the maximum number of lots. There is a Stone Line Creek that runs in that westerly portion, so obviously there's a buffer around it. But still, even for density, it kind of doesn't make sense to see why that might be highlighted for a rezone.
Just in our discussions, it had picked up on some of the wetland and the creek that you had in there. And my reading of the current laws and just some of the buffers, it appeared that it was a bit challenging on that maximum density, but I haven't looked at it from an analysis of lot by lot and what could be in there.
We did delineate the wetlands prior on that site a few years ago, too.
And again, we've spoken very generally here about the new laws that have come out of the state of New York, whether that's the wetlands laws or whether that is the MS4 regulations. We've talked about the difficult, basically the shape of some of these lots and how the setbacks would kick in with a stormwater pond or however it may be, with a roadway going in there, so on and so forth. So again, looking at all of these undeveloped lots and evaluating what we've seen over the past 5, 6 years, 10 years in some of these other subdivisions around a similar sized lot to this and how they've turned out. We're basically taking the experiences that the town has had, looking at the existing state laws and how can we improve that. As it was just said right there, it's not even able to handle an R20 style subdivision and it's been submitted for less. So right there, we're looking at all of these properties.
Nicole, can you pull up Myers Corners Road again, that corridor?
North.
Joey, can you show Nicole where Myers Road is, the subdivision that I'm building now?
Yep, go more to the right. Drag it. Just keep going. Yeah.
Show my eyes.
Yep, it's there.
So Nicole, I purchased a property that was in an R40 zone, I believe. And again, prior to me purchasing that, I bought it from the Archdiocese in New York a few years ago.
Nope, I can,
Micro-
got microphone, he can't hear you. On the,
Well, I can talk a little louder. So I had bought that
you get picked
property.
up by the public.
Good morning. And I guess first I want to say I can see how much time has gone into this, and I appreciate everyone's time here. I know a lot of you on a professional and personal level, so I understand everyone's involvement here. I had bought that property a few years ago from the Archdiocese of New York, and as Ken said, he, prior to buying his property, came to the town. Before I purchased a property, I went to the town, and it was sitting there vacant for some time. I don't know the whole history on it. Joey, you might know the history more than me. It was in an R40 zone. It was, I think, 24 acres total. It was 2 parcels at the time, I think 15 acres and 8 acres. And before I purchased it, I came to the town of Wappingers Building Department and said, what can I do here? Based on the current zoning, what can I do here? And at the time, single-family, residential, acre lots, and we laid out through the planning board process, the roads, the infrastructure. Now, I have town water there. I have septics on each lot, so we went through all the appropriate channels. But I would not have purchased that property if I didn't know, based on the time that when I bought it, after I went to the town, that because it was bought from a church, so I had no idea. Is there restrictions? What can I do? What can I not do? What was the history here? I wouldn't have bought it if I didn't think I could utilize the existing zoning, go through the planning board, go through all the appropriate channels, professional consultants and things to accomplish what we did. And right now, as you see, it is subdivided into 12 lots. 10 come off of a town road, 2 come off a shared driveway. It's been a very successful project, and I'm a broker and an agent, so I sell my own products. I have the property on Chelsea Road that I purchased recently, where I have 17 lots that I'm working on and concurrently, and I get all the calls from the people that they want to move in the town of Wappingers. There's not that much land left here, and I understand there's probably some parcels that maybe aren't really developable. They have a lot of restraints on them. They have certain, things that might make it challenging. But I also know there's probably some parcels that can be developed with the right approach. And as Ken said, he has a piece of property on Old Hopewell Road that's currently zoned R20. It is in the sewer district. I have a lot up the road on Old Hopewell Road that just got approved, a single lot to tie into the sewer. I will be the developer on that project if this does go to the next point. And I would say to Ken, I don't really understand why that property is on this list to be rezoned. I think based on what everything's around there, in fact, you're going to be really hurting him financially.
So just to opine on some of the things there, again, obviously with sewer, we don't control our sewer plant. That's controlled by the Tri-Municipal Sewer Commission. And we have the 2 experts right here, the people that have been dealing with Tri-Municipal. And could you just give us the process as to how we've been handling Tri-Municipal and what's a typical situation work for someone that's even in the district, what we have to do. And as far as I know, no one has received any approvals to get into tri-municipal because they placed that burden onto us to carry their application.
Larry, I think we just, 237 Old Hopewell Road was approved, because I think your office coordinated with Stokosa's office for that single lot for me, right up the road from me.
So single family.
Yeah,
So single family.
Just run.
But let's talk about the other subdivisions that we've been considering, and they are in the sewer district, and because of the difficulty that they recognize, they've come back and proposed doing septic systems on all the lots.
Correct.
Am I not correct?
Correct. Every single subdivision we've had, yes.
So, I mean, that gives evidence to the difficulties that we're currently experiencing, that let's not call them difficulties, let's call them challenges with figuring out where we're going with tri-municipal. And Michael, I have to just make the correlation between what you were saying about Myers Run and what Barbara said earlier. You know, you said it's a very successful subdivision. I mean, successful in the fact that you've got beautiful homes up there, you build a nice product, but there's struggles with stormwater there. They're going to have individual, the subdivision was designed with individual rain gardens on each lot, which are going to be the responsibility of each homeowner to maintain. And the obligation of the homeowner, first of all, to do that, and the obligation of the town to make sure that continues to happen as an MS4 community is, I mean, they had to do that because there was no place else to do something that was more sophisticated and able to make it more centralized. So
Because of the number of lots created, they could not do that.
I spent the majority of my 40 years on the other side of the table, and it's a grueling. That side of the table is grueling because of the situations that we're in that the supervisor is talking about, where you know, you have these lots that look like you can do all this development with until you get into it and you realize that you got stormwater regulations, you realize you got steep slopes, you realize that your septic capacities are limited due to different soils. Wappingers has got its share of clay and rock. So, you know, and the municipalities are criticized, and I was one of the ones criticizing them, that, you know, make a regulation that give us the rules when we go in, that we know what we can do. And that way, the process goes smoother, everybody comes out with what they were anticipating, and the cost of review and re-review and re-review doesn't go through the roof, which it does on all of these projects, you know. And again, I've been on the other side, and I've got over 40 years, some developers who we've worked with for many years, and we've become close to, and we've advised them against going forward with developments. And they're like, but this says we can do it. I says, I know it says you can do it, but you got this, and this, and you're going to have a challenge.
And let me just say this, that again, it doesn't matter if someone receives some sort of commitment or some sort of word from a prior administration. We can't be held to that standard. What we're trying to do is exactly what Larry just said. Make this easier, make it more upfront, rather than you go through this entire process and you learn about this at the planning board, you learn about this after the fact. Right now, yeah, the current zoning map is an invitation for chaos. It 100% is. What we're looking to do is make it easier on everyone to be upfront. Larry, you summarized it perfectly. If I could just turn it over to Mrs. Roberti. One more sewer, yes.
On the sewer issue, when I first bought my property, I went to the assessor to talk about my assessment. And one of the things that I brought up was, why am I being charged 10 times the amount for sewer on vacant land? My land has never flushed a toilet, it's never taken a shower, it's never taken a bath, but I pay 10 times as much as the person across the road from me who's got 5 people living in the house with numerous bathrooms and bedrooms. And I was told at the time, when sewer lines were put in, they weren't put in for what currently exists, but what will exist in the future. So you're being billed based on what you will be able to put in the future?
No, so-
Wait, I'm just,
Yeah,
let me just finish.
Yeah.
So,
If,
my phone ain't-
it's a,
but, so my question would be, if I've been paying, and the previous people have been paying since 1962 sewer taxes on a piece of land with the hopes that they would develop it someday, are being told, well, you now can't, it just seems
so
highly unfair.
that's not accurate, and I followed up based on our conversation we had on your property, why your property is charged for what it is. It's not based on the developable capacity. That's actually inaccurate. The way the town of Wappinger runs its billing through taxes in the water and sewer districts is actually for vacant land less than a single-family zoned house.
That's not
And
true.
it is true. So for your property, though, you have a home on it, it's based on your assessed value, and of course, we know about the acreage of your property, so you're paying for that. It is not based on the developable yield of your property.
You
It's
should
not.
look into the house over on, not the house, the 90 acres on Spook Hill Road. It is paying tons of sewer taxes.
Yeah,
There's
because
nothing
it's
on that.
90 acres, but it's
But
not based on...
there's no house on that plan.
It's not based, because if it were going to have houses on it, it'd be a lot more. I'm just telling you that, it would be a
No,
lot more.
I understand I'm not being charged 20 times because I could build 20 houses on my property as the current zoning is. I'm only being charged 10 times, but as I said, it seemed to be an agreement, and maybe I misunderstood the assessor at the time, but
Yeah.
I
We
am...
do not charge
I am
based on
paying-
developable capacity. We do
I will
not.
check because
Yeah.
last time I checked, my sewer bill was twice as much as the person across the street.
Don't forget, across the street is, what, a quarter-acre lot with a raised ranch on
Which
it.
a much nicer house than my house.
Yeah, much lesser house than
A
yours.
bigger, nicer house than mine, and they're paying a tenth. At least that's my understanding. I'll double check after the meeting.
We'll talk about that, yeah. But, Mrs. Roberti, would you be able to opine and piggyback on what Mr. Paggi had said in terms of, I mean, Myers Run, you brought it up, if you don't mind. Myers Run, obviously, we have individual rain gardens put in there. There was a significant amount of work that had to be done to get the road through there. What are going to be the realities of these people moving into homes that sold for $1.2, $1.3 million?
I believe there's a couple of lots that have wetlands behind them. So where they may have a lot of land, you have to subtract the wetlands, and then there's a 100-foot buffer. So what actually do they have for a setback from their back door to that wetland buffer? You know, you go and, no offense, Michael, you go and you see this beautiful lot for the average buyer, and they don't realize that that wetland and that buffer is going to take up most of their yard. And while passively you can walk in it, they can't come in and get a building permit for anything in that land. You can't even go and get a variance to go into the wetland buffer. So that surely on $1 million house with somebody with that type of financial back can't put in that huge built-in pool and a cabana and a shed and a swing set. So it does affect it. And I think that going forward, when we create lots, my opinion is that each lot should have to meet its setback plus a percentage or a number, 20 feet, something, so that after the house is built, they still have room without needing a variance to put in that type of extras that these homes will require when you can afford
Well,
that.
there's even no guarantee, even if you go for a variance, you're going to get the variance.
True.
So that's the other problem that you run into. So I agree with your assessment here that we should make sure there's a little bit of buffer on the back so that if somebody does want to put a pool in for an expensive house or whatever, they have the ability to do it. Miracle Circle is the
Perfect
example of,
So
it didn't happen in that
let's bring
particular
up Miracle
development.
Circle. So maybe that should have lost a lot, and that lot could have held all its stormwater and met the MS4 regulations instead of 3 or 4 homes having this big ditch behind it that will fill up, if it works right, water until it's discharged and it's weedy. You know, I've met some of those residents, and they have small, from babies to toddlers, and they're concerned of the danger, you know, and they bought a house and didn't know that the predominant amount of their rear yard would not be usable.
So you can't even put a fence or anything up in the back, and that's a problem.
Engineer's report, I mean, when you buy a house, you an engineer to tell you all that stuff. And if you
really-
buy the house anyways, then...
The average person does not hire an engineer. They go with a broker, and most brokers are very good at their job, I'm sure, but I don't think they have an engineering background. I've talked to brokers that aren't really sure what easements mean, and it depends. You could have a sewer easement, you could have a drainage easement. They don't realize they can't put fences in there and other sheds, et cetera. There's one there that has a 15-foot easement down both sides and 30-foot in the rear. That's
And then a snow easement in the front yard.
That's an abundance of land that, yeah, they can walk on it, but they can't use it to put anything on it. And those people claim they did not know that until the closing. So at that point, you can't walk away, you have nowhere to, you've sold your house, your belongings are in a truck.
And this is our reality. I can't tell you how many times we've actually sat in this room, my fellow council members have been there we do town hall style forums with residents of new homes and new subdivisions, more than we do with folks that have lived in Edge Hill or Rockingham Farms that have been there since the 70s. We meet with residents of new construction frequently because of these issues. And let's be honest, again, based on this zoning map, majority of the town, if it were to come before the planning board today, would not have been able to be built the way it was. You know, you have places off of Robinson Lane, Joan and Paulette, are built in floodplains and built in wetlands. I have been down these streets in flooding cases where an above-ground swimming pool looks like an in-ground swimming pool with how much water has been flooded in these folks' backyards. So the existing zoning map doesn't work. And again, we're not saying that this is going to be throwing out any and all development. This is lessening the density, to be realistic. If some of these subdivisions took a lot or two off of their proposal in front of the planning board, they would probably be able to just build a private road at that point and not have to build a town road, but would also be able to put all of that infrastructure aside on that section there. So it makes it more realistic, it makes it more livable for the future residents.
I guess I just want to comment quick on that. I mean, the private roads, look, I get all the calls for people that want to come and buy a house in the town of Wappingers. They want new construction.
Supply and demand.
24, 25. They've looked at lots in other towns where they've been told, oh, we can build a house for X amount, but oh my God, the utilities and all these things that we have to do. Things that Larry were talking about too, that now by putting a plan like this, maybe you can say to the developers, well, there might be some other costs involved in this site or things. And I think that's smart development from the town. And on the development side, every parcel is different and unique, though. I have customers, as Barbara said, up at Myers, that I'm very transparent with all of them. Here's the filed map. Give this to your attorney. You have a wetland behind your lot. There's a 100-foot buffer. There's going to be a boulder. There's going to be this. So, and I think there's, not just in the town of Wappingers, this is happening in a lot of towns. I do a lot of work up in Northern Dutchess and other areas where they all share the same concerns. What I want the town board to know today is that when I met Mr. Chrisman, who owns that property, I was introduced by the engineer, and he came up and saw Myers Corners run and said, I think you're doing a good job. I sell my own product. I deal with my own customers. This is what I'm looking for to do on my property. Would you look at it? And then I did get involved with him, and I said, this is a nice parcel. These are where people want to live who come to the town of Wappingers. Because the other alternative is going to be to renovate a lot of these houses that are existing. There's not much land left here to build on. And I will have to say, I do agree with Ken. When you look up on that map, that parcel there, and as Joey said, look, we have 11 lots in front of the planning board now that we're stuck on. Do we lose a lot to make the infrastructure easier? That's an engineering thing for me to go through. And I might say to Ken, we're going to lose a lot because it's going to be better, more cost effective. But to chop that in half, it kills the development. It does. It doesn't work financially, from the roads to everything there. And I think that's where, you know, and I understand what you're doing on this map. I get it. I understand. But from a planning board point of view, and to keep some type of new housing inventory available in the town of Wappingers, which I don't think is a negative thing at all, And I don't think having 11 lots there negatively affects the town's comprehensive plan, even if you change everything that I'm looking at on there. So I just think every site is unique and every process is different. And the process that this gentleman is at is he's in the planning board and he's stuck. He can't do anything right now. And it's unfortunate. It really is. I feel bad for him.
Michael, just one comment.
Tom.
You are not the norm with your transparency, which is a beautiful thing. I mean, the fact that you... Right, exactly, so...
I was a middle child.
But you got to remember, and we're dealing with this in some of the subdivisions, some of these people own the house for a year and then they sell it. And then it's the next person we're dealing with, and you have no control over that.
Where I hear from our brokers were calling up in court and saying, Michael, they didn't realize they had to put this culvert pipe in, and now the town's telling them they can't resell. And I'm like, it all comes down to transparency. But you're right, these engineer maps, everyone doesn't read all this stuff on there. I mean, I showed everyone, here's these rain gardens. You have to maintain them. I understand they're probably a nuisance. I get it. Everyone gets it in this room. I also believe, I don't know how many parcels on there are really going to have single-family new construction in the future. I don't know. I want to study it a lot more. But I do know you really need that to keep the town moving. People want to live here. They don't want to always live all the way down.
Well, they want to live here for a certain quality of life, Michael, right? And that's the thing that, listen, you have a job as the developer. I get that. You don't live in the town, but you do business in the town. We appreciate that. All right, well, but I'm sure that you'll live on a nice big piece of property somewhere. At the end of the day.
Myers Run.
Yeah.
You can live on Myers Run?
I'm going to take a lot of the offer. Sorry.
Exactly. What did you just say? Can we get that on the record? Even the developer wants to live on a larger lot. But let me just say this, folks. And we get that. But this town has followed every single housing trend dating back to the 1800s. Let's be honest. We had factory housing. Then we had big estates. We had farms. Then you work into the World War II boom, and you see the town grow. We've grown exponentially over time. We've had every housing trend. It's not a bad thing, but people live here for a certain quality of life, and that's what we're talking about. So again, we're talking about a handful of properties being left over in the town, and those people chose to live here for a certain reason. That's what we're looking out for, is to preserve that quality of life for the handful of properties that are left and for the overall town.
Do you send out, Joey, just a quick question, if you're going to rezone or you're looking to rezone, do you send to these property owners a letter saying, this is what we're considering doing? And look, there was a moratorium 2 years ago. I didn't know about it. I would have submitted a full print.
You knew about it, Michael. You were in my office. You were in my office.
Someone like him, will he get a letter saying, just so you know, this is what we're considering for our smart growth plan? And if you have something that would not align with this is a window when you should come and talk to. And that's one question I have, is has everyone here received something on that? We may rezone you and cut your density in half. That's going to stop you from, maybe they never intended to do anything. I don't know. Some of these parcels, you might not be able to build them anyway. I don't know.
So the law requires that when there's a zoning amendment, that the zoning amendment goes to the planning board for its referral back to the town board with recommendations, and then public hearing is held at that time. Notice does not have to be individually sent to property owners. The notice is published in the newspaper. It's put on the town website, consistent with the state law and with our local law.
Yeah, it was the same process here when we did the comprehensive plan and set the zoning back then. Yes.
Just to, a fairness issue does come into this. The people who caused all the problems that you're talking about are the homeowners. When I'm walking down the road, the car zooming by me is not an empty landowner, it's a homeowner. So the traffic, the fire, sewers are all caused by the homeowners. Developers pay by the lot, they don't pay by acreage. So the people who are going to get hurt by this are the landowners like myself. Residents in your community who bought land that was R20 that's not going to go, in some cases, up to 5-acre lots, their value of the property is going to drop by 80%. Let me just finish. Is going to drop by 80%. And they didn't cause a problem. Every time somebody drives by my beautiful property, they get to see my beautiful property. Every time water runs off their property, gets to run on my property. I pay the taxes, I pay the insurance, I pay everything. They get to benefit from living next to my beautiful land, and they've had for generations. But this, what you guys are considering, is punishing the people who didn't cause the problem. In fact, if there's anyone who's a good person in this, it's the people who haven't developed the land yet. And I know you mentioned a few times that the land that hasn't been developed is because it couldn't be developed. Well, my land was owned by the same family since 1969. They were refugees from the European wars. They refused to sell the land when they were people offered to buy it. The Suchich family, they owned that land for generations. That's why it wasn't developed. Cranberry Hill they tried to develop the Cranberry Hill numerous times, as you know, and the town always shot it down.
Well, no, that's not necessarily true, because Cranberry had full town planning board approval twice, and the federal government, the Army Corps of Engineers, did not give its permits, and it expired. So no, but that's exactly it. That property could not produce a conventional yield that satisfied requirements higher than the town of Wappinger with Cranberry. The Susich property, the Susich family developed Susich Place. All right? You have other areas of the town that have been developed, and you said it's the homeowners that are causing the problem. Well, people moved into these areas, into homes or apartment complexes built by developers. Sure. So there you go. It kind of rolled out the red carpet, and I hear from residents every day, this is my life, and I love it. People come in and say, well, I bought my house here back in the 90s. I bought my house here in the 2000s. Traffic has exploded since then. You know, we've continued to have a population boom since then. We all hear it. We all hear about the speeding and this and that, and we try to curb it. So again, this is all about proper planning. It's all about looking at the future impact of the town. And I think that's what we've heard here today.
But then stop any expansions on houses. If an issue is water, don't let somebody put in a new pool. That uses a lot of water. So just say no new pools. We're going to cancel all those because we don't have the water capacity.
Well, we're taking care of the people that live here, the people that live here now. That's the idea. That's the idea, Tom.
And I live here too in all land.
Yes.
So I'm just saying that.
But again,
you understand how rezoning affects the landowners, and they are the ones being hurt by this. I'm just putting that out there, as long as you understand.
Yes, we understand. Thank you.
I can provide clarity on something here, because this parcel that I own, Old Hopewell Road, that I bought from the third generation of the Susich family, they developed the rest of the property around.
Hang on one second. Nicole, he needs a microphone. They can't hear him.
Thank you. So the property that I purchased, 237 Old Hopewell, I bought from the third generation Susich family. It was not developed because it was a problem piece of property. It was held by 3 generations because it was an asset. The grandfather built the house that I live in now. He also built all those houses on Susich Place. He died in the 70s. His plan was, at one point, to continue developing and realize the value of that asset. So to think that there's parcels of property in the town that were not developed because they were problematic is not inherently true. This was, a valuable asset that the family retained that I subsequently had purchased from them. And so, any type of rezoning to the downside, we would do all plan submission at the planning board and build in compliance to what would be a nice neighborhood, would be then realizing the value of that asset. You have to understand the fact that, when we're talking about yield, that there is Stone Line Creek, there's a wetland, we're going to build within the constraints of, what would be allowable, but to think that there's a lot of parcels in the town that are simply not good pieces of property, I believe is absolutely a false statement.
You know, just when Mr. Suchis built the property in 1970, go back and look at what the regulations were back then. There were very few regulations.
Well, he built my house in the 50s.
So health department regulations were minimal. I mean, you were putting wells and septics 50 feet apart. You know, there were no wetland regulations. There were no stormwater regulations. So what wasn't a problem parcel back then has now become a challenging parcel with the regulations that are imposed. So, but it goes beyond that to not just meeting those requirements, it's to providing the person who's ultimately going to own it after you guys are long gone with the ability to continue as their family grows and they want to do something here, maybe add a mother-daughter or whatever.
But Larry, here, also, I am going to be one of the property owners in the new house. So you're talking about, you know, what the creation is going to be. I'm going to be living there.
Okay.
And Larry, everything that you just said, all engineering related, that's why I want to get back to the planning board, so you guys can look at that plan and you can do what you need to do on that plan. And Michael can, we're concerned about this, and you give us comments, and Dan Kohler can write them back and address them. That's all the reason why we need to get back to the planning board. Well, we're in the planning board, we're just stuck.
Any further discussion? All right. Yes, Mrs. Ibrahim.
Just a comment.
Mrs. Ibrahim.
Just a comment representing the people who live in the town of Wappingers that I've had the opportunity to interact with. They want to retain the green space that's in this town. And what you're addressing here are the landowners and the builders. I'm just voicing what the people who live in this town, how they want to see this town remain at this point.
Thank you. All right. Any further discussion or deliberation from the town board? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move it.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Casella, second by Councilman Phillips. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much, folks. We are adjourned.